I am Kristen. This is Eric Freund, and we are co-founders of Hope on the Hard Road, which we established as a nonprofit back in 2019, because we are a family with a daughter with a severe diagnosis of autism and developmental delays. And with all the things that families go through, we started a nonprofit to help surround the families and encourage the families, give them practical resources and encouragement in community. And so that's what we do. So these parent support groups are amazing because we bring in these experts that have all this great information. So tonight we are super lucky to have Jessica Diamond from Spellers Center San Diego. And Jessica, just like a lot of us, she's a proud mom of her daughter, Brecken. And while she had a bachelor's degree early on in environmental economics, when Brecken was diagnosed with autism at 18 months, that led her into looking into all of the therapies like many of us have done. And at one point, she stumbled on the book and read it named Underestimated. So some of you may know about that book. A really good book about spelling, the spelling method. And so she was drawn into that spelling method and then connected with someone in the San Diego area that she'll discuss and share with us a little bit more about. But she became a practitioner to help families, to help people that need this in their lives and this skill. So when she's not spelling, you can find her at the beach with her family, which is totally like us, probably on a surfboard. So love that. So we're going to go ahead and welcome Jessica, and she's going to go ahead and get started.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Bet.
I'm excited to be here with y'all. All right, so I am going to just do a little rundown on spelling, like 101, what spelling is, and how it changed my life and how maybe it'll change yours too. And yep, I went to the beginning first. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what Speller's method is and how it helps. I say non-speakers here, but it's non-speakers, it's minimal speakers, it's unreliable speakers. And for instance, my daughter, I consider her a minimal speaker. So she has her own little things that she says that are just like Breckenisms. Like she says, I do to you, and that means I love you. But she'll just say sort of like things that are gibberish, but homegirl will come out and very clearly say beach, chocolate, and Disney. And that is real language. So there's like, yeah, like a whole spectrum of language for our non-speakers. Um, so the biggest thing that I have learned in the spelling journey is, to me, with my daughter at least, and this is again another spectrum, she is apraxic, which is basically she has difficulty with motor control. And this is very, very common across the spelling universe, or the Spellaverse, as we call it. There's what I've discovered more often than not. I know we've been told our kids' entire lives that they're intellectually disabled. They are, that we're going to get into IQ tests, we're going to do all sorts of things. She's not. They're not. It's all motor planning. Everything comes down to motor planning. And I'm gonna tell you why spelling is going to help non-speakers who haven't achieved robust communication through other modalities. And that's going to come down to motor planning again. So this is my girl, me and my girl, like I said, Disney. So this is my husband and Brecken and I at Disney World, probably 10 years ago. And this is Brecken and I at Disneyland, maybe 3 weeks ago. We're a huge Disney family. So like Kristen said, she was diagnosed around 18 months. And I tried, I mean, you're normal, the OT, the PT, the speech, right? Um, biomedical, homeopathy, I mean, all sorts of things. And some helped in terms of like her gut health, in terms of her actual physical health, but the communication that had gone away just wasn't coming back. And so thankfully, spelling brought it back to us in this way. So again, a non-speaker, no speech, minimal speech, repetitive speech, echolalia, scripting. I know we always used to say nonverbal. I'm gonna explain to you why we don't say that anymore in a couple slides. And that comes down to the tiniest bit of neurology we're gonna get into tonight. This works for all sorts of populations, by the way, not just autistics, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, just anyone who has motor planning issues, which brings us to praxis. Praxis is the ability to successfully interact with your environment. Something like, I'm thirsty. Okay. I'm sitting on my sofa, I'm watching TV, and I'm like, I'm thirsty. And I have the thought in my head that I'm going to get up and go into the kitchen because I know that there's sparkling water in the fridge. And so I've formed an idea. I'm going to get up and go into the kitchen. I'm planning it and organizing it in my mind. I'm still in my mind here. Initiation and execution is where that motor planning breaks down for our apraxic spellers. I tend to think of it like I've gotten up, I'm going to the kitchen, and for me, something like the dog gets in the way. The dog always gets in the way, by the way. That throws me off.
Okay, let's go.
But for someone who has apraxia, their own body throws them off. Um, I tend to call it getting stuck. Like Brecken will get up to go and do something and her body will physically just get stuck. She'll open a cabinet to get a snack and just stay there, staring at what she wants. She can't get her body to get it. So that is the breakdown of the motor planning process, which is what we call praxis. And so this is just like another model to show how it works. So the cognitive motor control, I'm still sat on the sofa. I haven't moved an inch. I'm thinking about the fact that I'm thirsty. I'm planning that I'm going to get this sparkling water from the fridge. I'm putting everything in my mind is set to get up. Initiation, let me tell you something with our spellers, initiation is so huge and something that requires a lot of work, just in terms of getting the body to start moving in a purposeful way. This is where we get stuck. This is where we get stuck, is between the initiation and the execution. Something like, I don't know about y'all, but I'm a middle-aged woman and I can walk into a room and forget why I walked in there. That's where we get stuck between initiation and execution for us. But these motor planning breakdowns just occur because of the motor strip being inhibited, if you will. Okay. So praxis is when everything's going right with your motor system. It's responsible for all forms of communication, oral speech, body language, braille, writing. I had a client ask me last week about handwriting for her young son, and in schools like handwriting, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, does it matter to you? Because it doesn't matter to me if Brecken can ever write her name beautifully. First of all, she's going to type. That's the next step where we are in our spelling journey. And it doesn't matter to me if she can write. Anyway, I went on a tangent there. Finding gross motor skills, those are all praxis. Hobbies, think about it, painting, drawing, knitting, woodworking, all of that requires really controlled motor skills. Yeah, adaptive daily living skills, showering. My daughter's 16 and I'm still working on that independent showering skill. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one to me, to her, for her, not so much for me. Getting dressed, buttons, tying shoes. Um, thank goodness Vans are cool. You just slide them right on. Um, she loves like those jeans that are baggy and a little cargo-y, and like thankfully I've been able to find some that have an elastic in the back because buttons are still a thing. It's like things I didn't think would be a thing when she was 16. They're still a thing, and it's all fine motor skills. It's all that praxis. Social interactions, eye contact, right? Walking away in the middle of a conversation, yelling out of nowhere, being completely overwhelmed, too many people, too loud, too bright, all of that is motor overload. Academic learning. Here's what we're going to cut. This is what I was talking about before. So every test your child who has motor planning issues has ever been given that comes back with intellectual disability, low IQ, yada yada, it's because those tests all require fine motor. They're either fill in this little tiny dot or point to this particular thing, or just everything in those academic tests require fine motor, not just motor, fine motor. And that's why we get those results that, you know, tend to be a little disheartening, until you find another way for your child to communicate, and open up the brilliance that is in their heart and soul and brain. All right, so what does practice have to do with non-speakers? Non-speakers struggle with speech output because it's a motor skill. Again, apraxia, the motor disorder. This is because speech is fine motor. The little tiny muscles of your articulators in your mouth, those are fine motor. So when you have a motor planning breakdown, the fine motor is the most difficult thing. So what spelling does is it takes speech out of the fine motor of your articulators and it puts it into the gross motor of your shoulder, which is completely brilliant and also completely simple at the same time. Not that it doesn't take work, because it takes a lot of work. So that's the basis of how this works. And I'm going to keep talking about that too, is the fine motor versus the gross motor. The other really important thing we do in the spelling method is presume competence, because I will tell you, in our world, in our life, my daughter loved going to school until a point. And then it was when she started going to high school, and it's like something just like clicked, like she did not want to go to school anymore. And I would ask her, and thankfully we had started spelling already, because I was able to ask her, like, why? You always loved school. And this was her literal response. I don't, not anymore. I don't want to go. Please, I don't. And it's because they did not presume competence in her. She was still getting the same academic, if you even want to call it that, instruction she'd been getting her whole life. It's like, point to a tree. I know it's a tree. I know how to spell tree. I know what a tree is. It's, again, that motor planning breakdown where even though everything is clicking internally, getting the body to get to the right answer, to like check that box academically, just doesn't happen with our apraxic kiddos. I say kiddos. I know they're not all kiddos, but I call everybody kiddo. I call my dad kiddo. So a huge part of our method is presuming competence. When I have someone walk into my clinic for the first time, how old are they? I don't need to know anything else about their academic background, about what they've been taught, what you think they might know. You walk in, you're 25, great. I'm going to talk to you like you're 35 at least. You're smarter than 25. Because the other thing is, when you are a non-speaker, minimal speaker, unreliable speaker, it's sort of akin to being blind, right? That one sense that has been lessened, you take in everything else. So I have yet to meet a speller who was not spelling far beyond their age. And we call them littles, right? So like 6 to 12-ish, like we just call them littles. And I've got a few that come to see me every week, and they're absolutely darling. But you walk in, you're 6, and I'm going to talk to you like you're 12 because I know you're taking in so much more than anyone else gets. One of my favorite stories, one of my mentors a few years ago when I was first becoming a practitioner, uh, was telling us during class one day about one of her clients at the time who was sat in class in one of these classes that's teaching, let's count to 100 for the 4,000th time. And he tuned out his classroom and he tuned in next door, and he taught himself calculus by listening to the class next door. Like, my mind gets blown on a daily. It's really cool. Okay, sorry, moving on. This is a little bit neurology we're getting into here. This is where the motor breakdown occurs. And this is how, like, the basis of how spellers work. And I'm not going to go really like hugely into it, but so we've got these two major areas in our brain in terms of language. And one is Wernicke's area. And Wernicke's is the area that interprets the sounds that enter your ears. It's the comprehension of speech. That's where you take things in and begin to process them. And the signal travels down to Broca's area. That's where your expressive center for language is. That's where you form your response. So even if you're non-speaker, this is still happening. The language is being brought into Wernicke's, it's traveling down to Broca's. A response is processed and it's there, but it's just sitting there until you find a way to get it out. So Broca sends the response to the motor cortex. Because of the apraxia in our spellers, there's a breakdown between the motor cortex and the articulators. So the thoughts still in Broca's, it's sitting on the motor cortex. It just gets stuck between here and here. And that's why there's a lot of frustration with our non-speakers, because the thoughts are there and they have yet outlet for them. So that could present as silence, it could present as scripts, it could present as just frustration, any sort of frustrated vocalization. I always personally think that's that thought that wants to be let out into the world and just literally is just sat there. Non-speakers rarely have receptive or expressive language delays. They have this expressive speech impairment where the thoughts are there and they just can't get them out. So because of that, this is why we say non-speaking, not nonverbal. Nonverbal insinuates that there is no language, that there is impacted cognition, and that is not the case. We say non-speaking because there's no speech because of the impacted motor. The language centers are intact. The cognition centers are intact. This is why we have to presume competence with our spellers, with our non-speakers, with our minimal speakers, because it's the knowledge is in there. The language is in there. It's just helping them get it out. So how does spelling method work? I'm talking a whole lot. Like, what's the goods? Spelling is essentially a form of AAC, or augmentative communication. It's designed specifically for individuals with apraxia and complex motor disorders. We really, I can say my job's a whole lot of things. My job is pivoting. Every day is different. Every client is different. Every day with every different client is different. Motor coaching is the biggest part of my job. I am a motor coach. Um, it's all about getting the body to connect as much as possible, getting the eyes to look. So that's a laminate board in that picture, which is like this one here, right? So get the eyes on the board, scan the board, find the right letter, reach out in whatever, if we're using a pencil with a stencil or a finger with the laminate, whatever level of board we're at, it's all about getting the motor to connect. So eyes first, right? Eyes on the board, find your letter, and then literally sometimes I'm like, make a point, make a pointer, make a pointer, reach out. The amount of stuck that happens is interesting. Every day's different. So like I said, non-speakers, no speakers, unreliable speakers, and various methodologies exist. Like I work for Speller Center. I do the Speller's method. We're not the only one. There's several out there. And our whole thing is like, great. The more the merrier. Whatever works for you is fantastic. This works for me, for my daughter, because it's the most structured. Of the methodologies that I've come across, and that just makes sense to my very sciencey brain. Okay, so the process for those of you who don't like, or a little bit more Spellers 101 here, there's two continuums and we need to continuously balance them. So we're going to go bottom up. The motor continuum is, if you'll see here, the 3 boards. So like this here is the full 26 stencil, but when you start, this is broken into 3, just the letters are bigger. It's easier on the eyes. It's easier on the hand. It's easier on everything. Like if you're trying to get the pencil in and I'm giving you a bare letter, it's obviously going to be easier. So we start with the 3 boards. Then you go to this bad boy. And then you go to this guy. And again, you don't have to do it, all of these. Like you can live here happily forever. It's very individualized. Like what makes your speller happiest? Because that's the whole point of spelling, is to give someone who didn't have another way to have a voice, to give them autonomy. So after the laminate, should y'all choose to, you can go to a keyboard, which is what Vince is doing down here in the corner. And then autonomous typing is like the highest level of motor, which is when the keyboard is in, we call it a cradle. It's just this like little contraption that the keyboard sits in at an angle that's really just cozy to type in. Not cozy, it's really hard work. Autonomous typing is incredibly hard work. So that's the motor continuum. And my daughter's been spelling, it'll be 3 years very soon. And we're on the laminate here, and we're just starting on this actually within the past couple of months because she does want to type. And this is the natural progression to typing because it is one finger pointed and it's really low in terms of sensory feedback because you're just touching this, where when you're with the pencil and this, you're getting a lot of sensory feedback, just more of the motor. And then when we do our lessons, we call them lessons, right? When we work with a speller, we read a lesson, totally age appropriate lesson, again, where we'll read a paragraph about whatever it is. I did more often than not last week, I used a fairly new lesson about Disney's Imagineering. So you read a paragraph, and then there's different levels of questions. So very beginning is just spell words, like just spell Disney, because you're just getting that motor coaching going, getting used to the boards, getting used to just everything. Then we do known questions, which are something I just mentioned in that paragraph. Then we have, it's not on here, it should be prior knowledge questions, which is not something I mentioned in the lesson itself, but something you know just by living. For instance, I wrote a lesson on Lin-Manuel Miranda, and one of the questions was, what animated film did Jonathan Groff famously voice Kristoff in? Frozen. Like, you know Frozen. Everybody knows Frozen. Not everybody. 99% of people know Frozen, just because like you're alive on the planet as a human. Semi opens have more than one answer. And those also have a level within themselves, because we can have semi opens that have 2 or 3 answers, and then semi opens that have 4 or 5 or 6. That is when you're building the motor and the cognitive stamina to get up to those open communication and creative writing, which is the gold. That is the like, what is wrong? What hurts? What happened? Like, that's the gold. And then math problems, yeah, a lot of people love the math. So we focus on building intentional motor pathways. We repeat the same gross movement over and over. So when you're spelling, you're reaching out 90 degrees over and over and over again, over and over and over again. You're building a really strong neural pathway, which is why you're so structured in terms of how you're sat, where your feet are. Your feet are flat, you're grounded. We want you grounded, that energy grounded, because that helps your regulation in terms of spelling. Because the more regulated you are as a speller, the easier it is. And I don't, not necessarily easier, but the more you can really put your energy into getting to that letter board, which is the consistent board placement and sitting posture. So the board is always over the dominant knee, meaning if you're righty, it's over your right knee. If you're lefty, it's over your left knee. Same place every time. I drop that board the same place every time, because then the eyes are going to the same place every time. Prompting. When a speller first starts, there's a lot of prompting. It looks like I am totally telling this person what to do, where to go, what to spell. And a little bit, yeah, but I'm just getting the motor used to doing that, getting there where they want to go. And then that also drops, just sort of like the questions get and the motor gets, the prompting drops. So in the very beginning, there's a lot of this, like over to the left, all the way. I'll use my hand, I'll tell them directions, I'll say right next door. And then as you move on, now when I drop the board with my daughter, I just say, look, find your letter, scan the board, move your eyes. That's all I do. And this is English. And again, age appropriate lessons to stimulate cognition, because another thing we've discovered is when you teach age appropriate lessons, that in and of itself is regulating, because so many of the people who walk into our clinic have never or rarely been taught at an age appropriate level. And I'm not a teacher, I'm a motor coach, but I think it's just that presumption of, I know how smart you are. I know how smart you are. There's nothing to prove. No tests in my building, no quizzes. I'm going to help you and your body get to this board to spell. And we're going to keep going until you can tell me what bothered you yesterday at school, at work, at the grocery store. So that's what is so important about presuming competence. So yeah, I build up motor and cognitive skills gradually, always balancing the two. If you go up too fast with the motor, the cognition's going to fall apart. If you go up too high on the cognition, the motor's going to fall apart. It's a balancing act. So spelling, again, avoids the fine motor muscles needed for speech. We use the gross motor of the arm or shoulder to point. Motor coaching the eyes is the most important part. It's the only fine motor. There's no way around it. It is what it is. Which is why developmental optometry is so often integrated into Speller's method. We are lucky enough to have an amazing developmental optometrist right down the street from our clinic. I personally brought my daughter to 4 or 5, I don't even know how many developmental optometrists before we met Dr. Daniel, who I'm speaking so highly of. And it's like game changer, above and beyond, not even close. The woman's amazing, amazing. It's this. So we also do vision therapy with Dr. Daniel, and wow, just the spelling, my daughter's accuracy and her eyes and the way they team, like work together, because her left eye had been turning out for years. And I'm again going people and throwing money at the wall. And so yeah, Dr. Daniel, if you're in SoCal or if you come visit, Dr. Daniel. So again, scanning and poking the letters, I'm like motor coaching the eyes. So again, the strictness of our posture, of how the body moves while we're spelling, is because these motor pathways are myelinated. They get dug into the brain, and we want them to be as precise as possible. That's how you keep going up that motor and cognitive continuum. And that's how we get to move up the boards. And again, like, not everyone needs to go to a keyboard. Not everyone has to. But should that be your speller, your child's desire, the building up of the motor pathway in a solid way is how those things are achieved. So what does Speller's method give to a non-speaker, minimal speaker? Robust communication. And again, I know I've said all of this already, but for someone who has no speech or minimal speech or unreliable speech, or even honestly tricky to me is the sort of person who has enough speech to get through the day, to get through life, to get their wants and needs fulfilled, right? But is that robust? Is that deepest existential, like, heart, soul? No. That's what Spellers gives even to someone who can tell you they want to go to Disneyland on June 3rd. Like, okay, super duper cool, but like, what do you want to do with your life? What makes your heart sing? Unlock potential and autonomy over your life. That, to me, there's so many things that my own family's spelling journey has brought. But for my daughter to be able to tell me, like, all right, I tried that dance class, mom, I don't want to do it again. Like, that's her call. And 10 years ago, I would just been shoving her in that same dance class, not knowing she didn't want to go back. So yeah, autonomy. So if you'd like more information, really difficult, spellers.com. We do this super cool thing. I don't have dates yet. We did it it was August last year. It's called Immersion Week. It's 5 days of intensive spelling and OT. And I believe Dr. Daniel, our developmental optometrist, will be doing some eye assessments in this next coming Immersion Week. We also offer an online communication partner course. We call a communication partner someone who spells the regulator, the motor coach. So we just started one this week, so that would be in 7 or 8 weeks. And that's 8 weeks, and you turn it, well, first of all, you take classes via Zoom once a week, and you get everything. Like, you go into the deep neurology, you learn everything about why this works, how it works. But you also video yourself with your speller and turn it in once a week, and you get feedback from one of us. So that's a really cool other way if you wanted to get going. Our clinic's in Oceanside for anyone who wants to see if it's something that might work for your family, for your child. Like, again, spellers.com. If you wanted to reach out, it's San Diego at spellers.com.
Jessica, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
I know we have others that have been doing this for a while. If you want to reach out specifically because you have questions about, we're already doing this. This is, you have other fine tuning kind of questions, please do reach out to Jessica
Yeah.
and Speller Center of San Diego. So
my email is jessy@spellers.com. Jessy.
there you go.
Yeah, we keep it simple.
I love it.
All right.
Simple is good. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you guys. I'm sorry, I'm having a little coughing jag here, but Jessica, thank you so much. This has been
Yeah,
amazing.
appreciate it.
Great information.